Okay, Virgo. Listen, I literally had to pause everything to bring this to you because what's happening in the energy around you right now isn't something that can wait. This is live, this is immediate, this is unfolding as you're reading these words. So take a breath, ground yourself, and pay close attention because this moment matters more than you realize. Ready? Here we go. So, something inside you is detonating right now, not destructively, but expansively, like a star going supernova, like pressure that's been building for months or years, finally reaching the point where containment is impossible and explosion is inevitable. And this explosion isn't chaos, it's liberation. Every boundary that's been constraining you is cracking. Every limitation you've been operating within is revealing itself as construct rather than concrete reality. Every cage you've been sitting in quietly is suddenly too small to hold the version of you that's emerging. Let me describe what internal detonation looks like from the outside. To observers, people who know you casually, or even people who think they know you well, you might look the same. Same face, same routine, same visible life. But anyone paying close attention can sense something's different, something's moving beneath your surface that wasn't moving before. Your energy has changed frequency, become more intense, more concentrated, like you're vibrating at speed that makes you slightly out of phase with the reality everyone else is operating in. Some people are going to be drawn to this new intensity, are going to want to be close to whatever's happening in you because transformation is magnetic. Because people who are exploding out of old versions of themselves carry energy that reminds others that change is possible. But other people are going to be threatened, are going to try to contain you, are going to unconsciously or consciously attempt to put you back in the box you're currently destroying from the inside. And you're going to have to decide whether you slow your explosion to make others comfortable or whether you let yourself detonate fully, regardless of who that makes nervous. Some explosions can be delayed, controlled, managed into gradual expansion that doesn't disrupt anyone's equilibrium too dramatically. Those explosions are polite, considerate, easy for everyone to adjust to. But this isn't that kind of explosion. This is the kind that happens when pressure exceeds capacity. When something that's been compressed too long finally reaches its breaking point and expansion becomes non negotiable. You can't slow this down, can't make it gentle, can't control the pace to accommodate people who need you to change slowly enough that they can pretend you're not changing at all. Let's pause here. This reflection invites you to consider, have you been trying to manage your own growth to avoid making others uncomfortable? Maybe you've been downplaying changes you're experiencing, hiding new insights, pretending you're still the same person you were 6 months ago because admitting you've outgrown that version would require conversations you're not ready to have. You might be performing old version of yourself for people who knew that version, going through motions of being who they expect while internally you're someone completely different. And that performance is exhausting, is creating pressure that's contributing to the explosion. Or maybe you've been apologizing for changing, making yourself smaller again when you start expanding, letting people pull you back into old patterns because their discomfort with your growth feels like your problem to solve. But other people's discomfort with your evolution is theirs to manage, not yours to prevent by staying stagnant, not yours to fix by shrinking back into boxes you've outgrown. Some people in your life right now are going to celebrate this explosion, are going to recognize that you becoming more yourself serves everyone, that your expansion creates permission for their expansion, that your refusal to stay small is invitation for them to stop shrinking. But others are going to resist hard, are going to tell you you're changing in ways that concern them, are going to frame your growth as loss, loss of who you were, loss of your humility, loss of your availability to them in ways they've become accustomed to. And you're going to have to let them be concerned. Let them grieve the version of you they're losing. Let them adjust or not adjust to the version of you that's emerging. This reflection invites you to consider, whose resistance to your growth have you been prioritizing over your own evolution? There's something specific about what exploding in your life at this moment means. It means this isn't theoretical, isn't future potential, isn't something that might happen if conditions align. This is active, current, happening right now, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. You might be feeling it as restlessness, as inability to tolerate situations you were tolerating fine last month, as sudden clarity that what you've been accepting is actually unacceptable, as impulses toward change that feel urgent instead of contemplative. Some people experience energy explosions as anxiety initially because their system doesn't recognize expansion and doesn't know the difference between growth pressure and threat pressure. So it triggers fight or flight responses when what's actually happening is metamorphosis. Your chest might feel tight. Your sleep might be disrupted. Your appetite might be weird. Your emotions might be closer to surface than usual. Your patience for bullshit might be at record lows. These aren't symptoms of something wrong. These are symptoms of something right finally asserting itself after being suppressed too long. Or you might be feeling it as sudden clarity, as pieces clicking into place, as understanding things about yourself and your life that were opaque before, as questions you've been asking finally receiving answers not from external sources but from deep internal knowing. Some people get downloads during energy explosions, receive information they didn't have access to before, see patterns they couldn't perceive from previous vantage point, understand dynamics that were invisible until the explosion shifted their perspective. Or you might be feeling it as desire, sudden, intense wanting, not for specific things necessarily, but for more, for different, for expansion, for experiences you've been denying yourself, for versions of your life you've been told aren't realistic or aren't for people like you. And that desire might feel uncomfortable because you've been taught that wanting is greedy, that being satisfied with what you have is virtue and wanting more is character flaw. But desire isn't greed. Desire is just life force. Is your system telling you it's ready for more than you've been giving it? Is internal guidance pointing toward expansion your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet? This reflection invites you to consider, what if the desires you've been suppressing are actually guidance trying to lead you somewhere you need to go? Let me describe what different areas of life this explosion might be affecting. It could be relational. Suddenly, you can't tolerate dynamics you've been participating in for years. Conversations that used to feel normal now feel draining. People who used to feel safe now feel constraining. Connections you thought were solid now feel surface level and unsatisfying. This isn't you becoming difficult, this is you outgrowing relational patterns that served an earlier version of you but don't serve who you're becoming. Some relationships will survive your explosion, will expand to accommodate your expansion, will meet you in your new size instead of trying to keep you in your old one. But other relationships won't make it, not because they were bad, just because they were built for different version of you. And trying to force current you into relationship designed for past you creates suffering that benefits no one. Or it could be professional. Work that felt fine last year now feels like slow death. Projects you could tolerate before now feel pointless. Authority you accepted before now feels illegitimate. Compensation you thought was fair now feels insulting. This explosion is revealing that you've been undervaluing yourself, accepting less than your worth, operating below your capacity because it was safer or easier or what was expected. Some people stay in professional situations that are killing them slowly because the alternative, admitting they've been settling, taking risk of pursuing more aligned work, potentially failing publicly, feels scarier than the known suffering of staying. But this explosion is making staying scarier than leaving, is making the risk of not changing feel more dangerous than the risk of changing. Or it could be creative, ideas exploding, projects demanding to be born, creative impulses you've been ignoring, suddenly too loud to dismiss, artistic expressions you've been too scared or too busy to pursue, suddenly feeling more important than anything you're actually spending time on. Some people suppress creative explosions because creativity doesn't pay bills, doesn't fit into responsible adult life, doesn't make sense to anyone who asks what you're doing and why. But creativity that demands expression doesn't care about bills or respectability or making sense to others. It just needs outlet. And denying it creates the kind of pressure that eventually explodes anyway. Better to direct the explosion than let it destroy you from inside. This reflection invites you to consider, what creative impulse have you been ignoring that's getting louder? There's something critical about timing and why this explosion is happening now. Explosions don't happen randomly. They happen when pressure exceeds container capacity, when what's inside can't be held by what's outside anymore. You've been building pressure for a while, maybe without realizing it. Every time you bit your tongue when you wanted to speak, every time you accepted less than you deserved, every time you performed version of yourself that wasn't true, every time you said yes when your whole system was screaming no, all of that created pressure, compression, internal tension between who you actually are and who you've been pretending to be for so long, you almost forgot there was difference. And now the container, the identity you've been operating in, the life you've been living, the roles you've been playing can't hold the pressure anymore. The structure is failing. An explosion is result. Some people try to reinforce the container, try to strengthen the walls, try to build better constraints that can hold the pressure a little longer, try to avoid explosion through better management. But you can't manage your way out of necessary explosion, can't control your way into expansion, can't think your way through transformation that requires you to let go of the version of yourself doing the thinking. Or maybe the timing is about readiness. You've been becoming someone capable of handling this explosion, building capacity through challenges you didn't realize were preparation, developing strength through difficulties you thought were just suffering. And now you're strong enough, capable enough, ready enough, not because you feel ready, you probably don't feel ready, but because readiness isn't feeling, it's capacity. And your capacity has been building even when you couldn't see it. This reflection invites you to consider, what if everything you've survived was actually preparation for this exact moment of explosive transformation? Let me address what you need to do and not do during this explosion. First, don't try to control it. Don't try to make it neat. Don't try to manage it into something comfortable for observers. This explosion needs to be messy, needs to be full, needs to be complete. Trying to control transformation is how people end up with partial transformations that leave them stuck between who they were and who they're trying to become, neither fish nor fowl. Uncomfortable in both old life and new life because they never fully committed to the explosion. Second, protect your energy during this period. Explosions require energy. Transformation is exhausting. You don't have surplus energy to spend on people and situations that drain you. It's okay to be selfish right now. Okay to prioritize yourself in ways that might feel uncomfortable if you've been trained to prioritize everyone else. Okay to say no without explanation. Okay to disappoint people who are used to you being endlessly available. Third, document what's happening. Write it down. Record voice memos. Create some kind of external record of this period because you'll forget. Transformation has amnesia built in. Once you're through it, you won't remember how hard it was or how significant the shifts were. And having record helps you resist people who will try to convince you you're the same as you've always been. Helps you remember that no, you're fundamentally different. You exploded, you transformed. You're not who you were. Fourth, expect relationships to change. Some will deepen, others will end. Others will go dormant for a while and maybe resurface later when both of you have evolved enough to meet each other differently. Don't try to hold on to everyone. Don't try to drag people through your explosion with you. Let people choose whether they want to be part of your new configuration or whether they need to step back. Some people will surprise you by staying, others will surprise you by leaving. Both are information, both are okay. Fifth, trust the destruction. Explosions destroy. That's what they do. And you might be watching parts of your life fall apart that you thought were permanent. Relationships ending, jobs changing, living situations shifting, identities you've held dissolving. This isn't failure. This is the explosion clearing space for what's next. You can't build new life on top of old life. The old has to be cleared. And clearing looks like destruction from inside it, but looks like liberation from the other side. This reflection invites you to consider, what are you holding on to that the explosion is trying to clear? There's something about what comes after explosion that matters. After detonation comes reformation. You don't explode and then disappear. You explode and then reorganize around new center, build new structure, create new container that can hold expanded version of you that emerged from the explosion. But reformation takes time. And in the gap between explosion and reformation, you might feel unformed, undefined, like you don't know who you are anymore because old identity is gone and new identity hasn't solidified yet. That liminal space is uncomfortable. Most people try to rush through it, try to quickly grab new identity to replace old one. try to fill the void with something, anything that makes them feel solid again. But rushing reformation means you end up in container that's barely bigger than the one you just exploded out of. Means you recreate similar limitations with slightly different details. The gift of the liminal space is that you get to be formless for a while, get to exist without defined edges, get to discover who you are when you're not performing any role or filling any expectation or being anyone for anyone. Some people never take that gift, never let themselves be truly undefined, and they explode and reform and explode and reform in cycles because they keep creating new containers that are almost the same as old containers. But if you can tolerate the discomfort of not knowing who you are for a while, you might discover something true. Might let your actual essence inform your new structure instead of unconsciously recreating old structure with new paint. Let me be direct about what this explosion is ultimately about. It's about you becoming who you actually are instead of who you've been performing being, about authenticity finally overpowering performance, about truth finally being more important than comfort or acceptance or maintaining dynamics that require you diminished. Every explosion is ultimately about liberation, about something that was caged getting free, about pressure that was contained finally finding release. And yes, liberation is scary because cages are familiar, constraints are known, performance is practiced. And freedom, actual freedom to be yourself fully, is terrifying because you don't know what that looks like yet. You've been yourself in cage for so long that yourself free is stranger, and brain prefers familiar suffering to unfamiliar freedom because at least familiar suffering is predictable. But predictable suffering is still suffering, and this explosion is your system saying no more, saying that familiar suffering is no longer acceptable, saying that you're ready for unfamiliar freedom even if you don't feel ready. Trust the explosion. Trust that whatever's being destroyed needed destroying. Trust that whatever's being liberated needed liberating. Trust that you're not falling apart, you're falling together in new configuration that can actually hold all of you. You remain in complete control of how you navigate this explosion. You can resist it or surrender to it. Try to contain it or let it be full. Apologize for it or own it. The power is yours. It always has been. You may notice reading this has named something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate. Maybe relief that this restlessness is actually transformation. Maybe fear about what exploding fully will cost. Maybe recognition that yes, something is detonating inside you and there's no stopping it now. Whatever it is, honor it. Take what resonates, softly release the rest, trust yourself. Before we close, I want to ask you something. What part of your life feels like it's about to explode right now? Can you name it? Drop it in the comments if you're brave enough. And this, if you let yourself explode fully without trying to control it, what's the worst that could actually happen? This energy is exploding in your life at this moment. And the explosion isn't something happening to you, it's something happening through you. It's you happening to your own life. It's your authentic self finally refusing to be compressed into spaces too small to hold it. The explosion is liberation, the destruction is clearing, the chaos is reorganization. And on the other side, not eventually, but after you let this be as full as it needs to be, as version of you that doesn't fit in old boxes because it's not trying to fit anywhere. It's just being fully finally, not eventually, right now, currently detonating. Trust yourself with this. Trust that explosions that feel destructive are actually creative. Trust that you can handle the intensity of your own transformation. Trust that becoming who you actually are is worth whatever you have to release to get there. See you in the next one. And listen, you're not falling apart. You're exploding into more, and more is exactly what you need, even if it's terrifying. Let it explode all the way. Don't try to control what needs to be wild. Take care.